Well, as you all know, the Lakers versus the Wolves, first playoff series that I will be watching. Don't know about y'all, but this is the only probably one that I'll be watching for real. Anyway, though, we got a video here that everything you need to know before Lakers versus Wolves. Now, mind you, I'm not really a basketball head. In terms, basically, I'm a casual, but I know that LeBron is the GOAT, so I can't be that much of a casual. So anyway, though, we got this 13-minute video here. Let's check it out.
Playoffs are officially here. And with the way the bracket turned out, I think we're in for a ridiculous 2 months of basketball. Of the confirmed matchups, I think the most interesting one to dive into is the Lakers and the Timberwolves, and that's because it probably has the biggest clash in styles. On one hand, the Lakers are an undersized team with ridiculous offensive talent and arguably the best collection of playmakers in the league. And on the other, the Wolves are a huge team with ridiculous defensive talent and a very flawed collection of passers and decision makers. Both teams have their own set of advantages and disadvantages, but what exactly can we expect to see in this series?
I am not going to lie. If Anthony Edwards pulls this off against LeBron and Luka Doncic, honorable mention, Austin Reeves, he might be top 5 in the league if he's not already. Top 3, shit. If he pulls this off. Do I think he's going to pull it off? No, not against LeBron. I'm not going to lie. When it comes to LeBron, I will never question his greatness because you never know.
Part of what makes this matchup so interesting to project is that we haven't actually seen these rosters go up against each other. They played 4 times this year, and only one of those games came after the trade for Luka Doncic. In that game, the Wolves were without both Julius Randle and Rudy Gobert, so it's pretty tough to gauge how exactly LA plans to adjust to that big front court. However, while the result may not tell us much, I do think we saw a few things from each team schematically that will probably show up again in the playoffs. The first thing that stood out to me was that the Wolves opened the game with Jaden McDaniels matched up against Jackson Hayes. If you remember last year's NBA Finals, Boston opened the series with Jason Tatum on Daniel Gafford, then they switched every ball screen, which completely took the Mavs bigs out of the game. In that series, Gafford and Lively combined for 6 total alley-oops. Now compare that to the Western Conference Finals against Minnesota, where the Wolves played the pick and roll straight up, with Gobert either trapping, hedging, or dropping, and those 2 bigs combined for 14 total alley-oops, or almost 3 a game. I think the Wolves could look to do something similar to the Celtics.
Yeah, that would be smart.
With Jaden on Hayes, that puts him in a position to switch every ball screen, eliminating Hayes as a threat on the roll and forcing the ball handler to beat a tough defender one-on-one. If that's the case, that means Gobert will be matched up with whoever LA goes with at the 4, which will end up being either one of Dorian Finney-Smith or Rui Hachimura.
Which is not really a threat, unless Rui gets hot.
Those guys spend most of their time spotting up in the corner, so it puts Rudy in a position to operate like a free safety. It's a tough spot though, because both of them have shot extremely well from 3 this season, so it's not like Rudy's gonna be able to freely roam, wall off the paint, and not close out. But I do think a key point of emphasis and a path to victory for the Lakers is for those 2 to hit most of their open threes and make the Wolves pay for overhelping.
Yeah, so basically if the bench players start playing like starters, they gonna win. But if not, it may be looking bad for the Lakers. So basically,
either way, I do think the Wolves will be forced to execute their rotations to near perfection.
Right.
In the event that Gobert's forced to help, they'll have to scramble to not give up catch and shoot threes, then forcing LA's wings to play off the catch and make tough decisions, as opposed to letting Luka or LeBron dictate every possession. With that said though, if they aren't hitting their threes, or maybe Rudy's staying home on every attack, or maybe even they find a way to rotate effectively and close that space, I do think it puts LA's offense in a position to make one of 3 adjustments. The first is to take whoever Rudy's defending and use them as the screener so that they can pull him into the primary action. And if that's the case, I'd expect Rudy to play his signature drop, but prioritize the ball over the roll. Going back to that conference final series, the main reason the drop got absolutely torched is because he was forced to play the 2-on-1 at all times, and Luka basically baited him into either dropping to the big or stepping up to the ball. That doesn't really work if the roller isn't a threat to get above the rim, so Rudy would be able to play up on Luka a bit more, taking away that in-between space. In order to attack Rudy in ball screen action, I think one of two things would have to be working. One is, of course, Luka's pull-up three. If he's shooting like he was in that series, there really isn't much you can do to stop him from absolutely torching you.
That's the thing, bro. It's like the Lakers got too many, like, toys to play with. Like, they got too many, like, you feel me, skill sets. So, like, if one thing don't work and the other thing do, you're fucked. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? And it's Luka, so you never know.
The other is the pick and pop. If Rudy's sitting back and playing the ball, those guys popping effectively could really punish that added space. The only problem with pulling Rudy into screening action in these lineups, though, is that Hayes isn't a floor spacer, so the Wolves could adjust by either pre-switching to keep Rudy near the basket or by having him step out to the shooter, knowing that Jaden is still one of the best rim-protecting wings in the NBA. For that reason, I'd expect the Lakers to counter by going to one of their smaller lineups. Now, instead of a non-spacer at the 5, you've got both Rui and DFS in either corner, which is when I think the Wolves would go back to some more traditional matchups with Jaden guarding Luka, but 5-out spacing with that much playmaking talent would be a nightmare to contain, and again, they'd probably be relying on really good shooters going cold.
Facts.
Of course, I should also mention that this is complete speculation, and there's a chance I'm completely off base. It wouldn't surprise me at all if Jaden starts the series on Luka, they go with Gobert on Hayes, and Luka goes right back to running spread pick and roll over and over again, and then we see a repeat of last year's conference finals.
I mean, bro, you gotta think. Luka basically whooped their ass last year by himself, basically. But he got LeBron and Austin Reeves. Like, LeBron himself, bro. He got LeBron. I don't even gotta say Austin Reeves. He got LeBron. LeBron James. Like, bro.
I just think the
that
Wolves are
alone
going
is
to try
just
throwing a
crazy.
curveball to open the series to make the Lakers adjust early. Either way, I haven't even gotten into LA's biggest offensive advantage, which is the question marks that surround Mike Conley. In their last matchup, they relentlessly hunted for Conley as he's just simply way too small to handle either Luka or LeBron, and that's the huge difference between their defense and last year's Celtics. Boston didn't have anyone who was a complete liability against big creators, so they could get away with switching every action. If Conley's consistently being switched onto the ball, now those guys don't even have to create dribble penetration to get an advantage. They can post up and force the Wolves to either send a double or rotate behind the play, which once again puts them into a scramble. If Randall or Gobert can't keep up with rotations, they can go to a smaller lineup of their own with Naz Reid at the 5, but now they're losing a ton of the advantages that come with the added size, creating a ton of tough decisions for the coaching staff to make. In my opinion, the biggest concern for Minnesota in this series is choosing which lineups they start and close games with. There's a really good chance that Conley becomes unplayable against a lot of LA's lineups because he's just being torched one-on-one. They can go to DiVincenzo for a bit more size, or to Alexander Walker if they want another high-level defender on the court, and I do think that would help a lot. But then they'd be sacrificing offense because they rely on Conley to be their best decision maker and extra passer.
Hey.
Speaking of which, the Lakers have a very set in stone defensive scheme that they've used in basically every game since Luka's arrival. Whether Hayes is in the game or they're going small, they're going to switch most actions to always keep a body in front of the ball. Then they're going to push the ball baseline to take away the middle of the floor, and from there, a help defender is going to step over from the weak side to load up early. The idea is to limit dribble penetration by always forcing the ball into immediate help, and they're able to do this better than most teams because their superpower as a defense is the speed with which they rotate. However, I do think the Wolves have a few things working in their favor. For one, I'd say it's getting somewhat overlooked how much of a size advantage they have.
Yeah, they do
and
got
the types of
bigs.
advantages that can lead to on the
Especially
offensive
they
glass.
wings are big, bro.
If LA is playing this aggressive style of defense, that's one less guy who's in a position to box out, and the Wolves have shown the ability to completely control the offensive glass. A big key in the path to victory for Minnesota is winning the possession game, which would start with winning the rebounding battle for all 48 minutes. Another potential key to victory has to do with the fact that Anthony Edwards has become one of the best pull-up three-point shooters in NBA history.
He been shooting that
of how
bit this
you load
season,
up
I
in
ain't
the
gonna
paint,
lie.
if he can get to 9 or 10 threes at a 40% clip, there really isn't much you can do but trap to get the ball out of his hands completely. As this season's progressed, he's gotten more and more comfortable passing out of those situations, and I do think letting a guy like Randall attack with a 4-on-3 advantage is extremely dangerous without a true anchor big to hold down the paint. Something else that I'd say is working in the Wolves' favor is that they have the roster flexibility to put out lineups with 5 high-level shooters. If they aren't getting stops, they might try to match LA's offensive firepower with a lineup of straight gunners, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they won the shooting battle. That defensive scheme relies on abandoning non-shooters to overplay the ball, but if the ball's always finding a 40% shooter, they're gonna put a lot of points on the board.
That nigga DiVincenzo be shooting
I
that
actually
bit.
think this series is gonna be a very high scoring one for that reason. I don't think the Wolves have the facilities to consistently slow down LA's offense without giving up something of value. It's like whack-a-mole. You scheme for one thing and another pops up. You scheme for that, then another pops up. And by the end of the game, the Lakers have scored 120 points. One of Minnesota's superpowers as a team, though, is
I just realized if these niggas go all out in the first series, oh my god, bro. They might not make it, bro. I'm not gonna I don't want to question LeBron greatness, but that nigga is 40 years old, bro. Damn.
the amount of different lineups they can go to. If they go Randall at the 5 with 4 shooters, now they're in a position to hunt for Austin Reeves in the same way the Lakers want to hunt for Conley. If Randall has Reeves on a switch and there's nobody to help off of, that's a really tough spot to be in. For all of his prior playoff shortcomings, I do think he's such a big mismatch and such a skilled passer that LA's gonna have their hands full, even in minutes with Edwards on the bench. On the other side of things, I don't think LA has the same type of lineup flexibility. For example, this is a series where it's probably tough to get Vanderbilt on the floor because the Wolves would then counter by just having Gobert camp in the paint. They also don't have the depth to go big in the front court, so they're confined to minutes of either Rui or Hayes at the 5. But what they lack in lineup flexibility, they arguably make up for in schematic flexibility. As a sort of counter or maybe just a curveball, it wouldn't surprise me if we see a lot of zone from the Lakers in this series. They've experimented a bit with a 3-2 zone in certain matchups, and I do think Minnesota's biggest weakness is their extra passing and decision making, which really showed up in the fourth quarter of that recent game against Milwaukee when they saw the 2-3 zone. And ultimately, that's where my final prediction lies. I think in many ways this series could end up being a repeat of last year's conference finals, even if the process behind getting to that result is completely different. What I mean by that is it's easy to forget because the Mavs won in 5, but the Wolves were either leading or tied after 3 quarters in all of the first 4 games, only for Dallas to completely blitz them in fourth quarters with surgical late game execution. I wouldn't be at all surprised if this is the exact same thing, with the Wolves controlling the possession game, hitting their threes, and making the Lakers play one-on-one. There's a very good chance that they end up winning the point differential in this series through 3 quarters. But between the lack of passing and decision making and over-reliance on Ant to hit really tough shots, I just don't trust their late game offense.
That nigga be showing bullshit with it, be like
that's
5 seconds
spearheaded
on the
by
clock.
2 of the smartest players the game has ever seen. I think this is a winnable series for Minnesota, and from what I've seen, they aren't getting nearly enough credit for the advantages that they do have. But for that reason, if I had to put in an official prediction, I'd go with the Lakers in 6 or 7 tight games, ultimately advancing to the second round. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to drop a like, subscribe.
I'm not gonna lie, bro. It's like 60-40. Cause it's like if Luka and LeBron could stay healthy, they'll be good. But if they don't, boy oh boy, them young ones are gonna come for you, man. Especially Ant, man. Especially Ant. Comment down below y'all predictions on the series. I think I really want to go Lakers 5 and 5. Nah, it might be a 7-game series, bro. I'm not gonna lie, bro. I am not gonna lie. I'm gonna have to go Lakers though. At the end of the day, I'm gonna have to go Lakers. Lakers definitely gonna take it. No cap.
Don't play with him.